So my name's Brent. You'll see a few little bits and pieces as we go through the slide. I'll explain kind of the story as we're going along. The reason that I'm here is I did a computer science degree. I built lots of products. I was a coder for a long time, and then I had the joy, I suppose, to build my own company. And the one thing you learn about building your own company is you think you get to do all the jobs you want to do, but you end up doing all the jobs you don't. So a big part of that is building the company, and a big part of that is sales. Now, as I personally am a honest agile. So in other words, what does that mean? It means that I follow I believe in the four values and 12 principles. I genuinely think that you can use them in a lot of places, not just software development. So I changed slightly the wording to be sort of solutions and, deliver working solutions in a short frame of time. That's what I believe you can do in a lot of organizations. So what does that actually mean when you boil it down? It means four things. So you're really trying to work as a plan, do, check, act cycle, but it could be a learn cycle. I don't really mind. I'm not wedded to anything. Fundamentally, you do something, you verify if it was a good idea. If it was a bad idea, you get rid of it. If it was a good idea, you persevere with it. You deliver value to the customer. The other thing I believe in is that you should try to limit the time it takes to deliver any of these experiments or assessments. So that's why I talk about cycle time. The third thing is gumming up the system. So most organizations that I've been in, they get gummed up. Think of a motorway on a bank holiday. Motorways on bank holidays get gummed up because there's too many cars. So if you keep your system to the optimum level, it will flow. All that flow metric, lots of books being written by very clever people about flow metrics. So I genuinely believe that that's important. And the third thing is not everybody has all the answers. Cross-functional teams, fundamental to how you should organize yourself. That's what I genuinely believe in my core. And that's why I think that you can start to use these in different environments. So, I'm going to talk to you about 4 different case studies. The numbers you're going to see are actual numbers, and they're based around these 4 case studies. One of them in particular is going to be the main focus of it, but I'm thinking of pull ideas from the other different case studies. So the 4 case studies are, one is a SaaS PaaS organization based in New York City, central New York City. It can't talk exactly about what the business model is, but it basically went from 0 to an IPO in about 5 years, 5-6 years. It's now $1 billion organization. I worked with them for about off and on 2.5 years, from pretty much the start when there were about 40, 50 people to about 250, 300. And then when there were about 500 to about 750. I started doing product development work with them, built basically Scrum teams. Having built Scrum teams, the efficiency started to go well, and I then got asked to be involved in other parts of the organization. One of them was the biz dev, sales, customer service, how can we work more effectively as a team with that. Second one is a large bank, purely B2B. So this was a large bank trading system. It was failing because customers were moving away from the trading system. They were in, and I told someone last night, the reason we were brought in is because they were in year 11 of a 2-year project. So we managed to get that on its legs, started to deliver customers onto that platform. And that was actually quite a simple process because basically we just said, what have you already built? Let's deploy it, get customers using that functionality. It sounded like stack deck, but it's reality. Then when they started to say, well, how can we help customers who are already annoyed, been waiting 11 years for this thing that was supposed to be 2 years, now they want to move away from our trading system. So we actually started to build, and I'll explain to you what we did with that, started to build customer success teams in a way to help them out. The third one is a digital scale-up. They were having year-on-year churn every 1 to 2 years, so there was a problem with the way that the product was perceived. And the last one is a large manufacturer. It actually does some manufacture of keyboards, and they were moving from keyboards into a digital marketplace. So they had things like an iPad sat on the keyboard, and it would be follow the bouncing balls, or they would slow things down or speed things up. It'd be quite fun work. So those are the 4 case studies that I'll actually be talking you through. Each one of them had one level, if not all, of those problems on the left-hand side, so that their teams were all siloed. Sales team here, that's it here, marketing somewhere else, etc. Product somewhere else. They had some level of Scrum, continuous improvement happening in the organization, but not obviously in that sales cycle. Cycle time was long. The B2Bs were sort of like 9 months. The big bank was more like 2 years. Measuring performance was purely a blunt tool, but it's how much money can you get through the door, simple as. Nothing else matters. And the mindset was, work harder. Simple as that. You're missing your target, work harder. So I'm going to go through a little sort of journey as to what each of those organizations did. But to start with, I'm just going to level set. So every organization has what they will describe as a sales cycle. Okay? Find people who want to buy your product or service, actually work service, and eventually go through a set of steps, and then finally get someone to part with their cash. So this is the one that I've simply created, and prove it actually exists. There's one from Salesforce of one of the customers. So that's 5 steps in Salesforce. Mine's 7, just to give you some ideas of what you're trying to achieve. The feedback loop at the bottom, I've just labeled expansion. That could be cross-selling, upselling, renewals of license fees, anything like that. The key about the bottom feedback loop is you're not trying to find a new prospect. Okay? You already know the customer exists. You already know that they've used your product at some level. So therefore, it kind of short-circuits a little bit that sales cycle. Now, most organizations, the larger organization, the worse it is, most organizations have a set of roles to fulfill that sales process. So they find somebody who's going to go finding customers. Often they're called marketing people. You will have somebody who's going to find if the customer is out there has got some sort of need for your product. So they might be biz dev researchers. You have salespeople who will try to create a proposal, try to set pricings, whatever that looks like. You'll have customer strategists who are the big brains in the room who will tell you, they might even be aligned with the product. And you'll have the various people like legal counsel who do the legal requirements, procurement, all that sort of stuff. And finally, the finance people who jump up and down when they're happy with the sale. That's my set of roles and people in an organization. Now then, we're going to play our first game. So if we have a sales cycle, who do we think starts the whole thing off? Any suggestions? Marketing, very good. Okay. So who then starts to contact the person who might be able to buy your product?
Say it.
Okay, biz dev research, yeah, BDRs, often called BDRs, certainly in America they are. Who might do some sort of like discovery about who the customer is and what the customer does and all that sort of thing. Okay, customer strategist, big brains in the room. Everybody wants to be a customer strategist. Well, I don't know. That's my understanding. Yeah, finally, you've got somebody who's going to make a proposal, especially in the B2B. They'll write a BDR, they'll write an RFP response. I'm talking to a large software services company who are writing a BDR response for $5 billion. It's 122 pages. No one's going to read that. I've told the guy in charge. That's normally the salesperson. Finally, in procurement, you're going to have the legal people who make sure the contracts are all okay, back and forth. And customer success. I call them customer success. You might call them customer support. You might call them whatever you want. They're the people who are going to onboard your solution. They're going to make sure the customer is happy. They sometimes call account managers because they talk to the customer quite a lot. They might have quarterly reviews, etc. Finally, you've got the finance person who's happy when the deal goes through. A lot of these organizations have this cycle taking months. At GE, if you're buying a large hospital, some sort of like X-ray machine or something like that, it's 20 years that sales cycle. So I don't know how they manage it, but they manage it somehow. They do sell things. Okay, so each of these organizations have started with a bit of a problem. And the one that I'm particularly thinking of, every person in the sales team had a personal bonus to be paid their own bonus. And these are actual figures. So they were expected to do $1,000, okay, of business. I'm just putting that scale. I've actually had to divide everything to fit it on the scale, make maths easy for me. And every single person over the course of 4 months was hitting about 20% what they need to achieve. But the problem was, every single salesperson was demotivated. They basically couldn't be bothered. It was not helpful to have a target that was made up by the executives. That's what they wanted. And it was not helpful for the salespeople to be the only people responsible for hitting those targets. So as a result, they were all very sad, very annoyed. So what was the first thing we did was we got them together, because they were all pretty individual people, actually. They're all going after their own individual targets. So the most they'll do is have a sales meeting every, whatever it is, 4 weeks or something like that. So what I actually did with each of these teams is I sat down, I did a very simple speedboat. That's my idea of speedboat on the left-hand side. And I, dug into them, what they were trying to do. So as we go through, you're going to start seeing these dashboards in a similar sort of way. So that team was so sad that one person left. But my wife pointed that out to me yesterday. And I couldn't be bothered to add it. So that team's only now down to 3. And the point is, even if you add up all of the sales achievements for that team as a set of people, 4 people, they still don't achieve one person's target. So it's basically a pointless exercise. Now, I would be demotivated on that score. So what did we do? Okay, so we started to ask everyone. Oh yes. So the first thing we did was looked at the sales cycle. Now, how many people are Agilists here? Yeah. Okay. How many are sort of like more in the sort of business, sales? Okay, you can, of course you can do both. Well, I think I do both. So if I ask the Agilists, if you look at this process, and then you consider it more like this, I'm expecting people to go, ooh, not at an Agile conference. But that's the reality of the situation. That's exactly what you see, day in, day out. But not just sales. For financial closing, for accounting teams, it's always the same. So one of the things that we started to do was we started to say, okay, that's the entire process. One person sitting on his box having a cigarette is responsible for the bonuses, for their personal bonus. But they're reliant, they're dependent on everybody else. Now the other key thing, as Daniel Pink is, he was like one of the top 10 TED Talk downloads. He basically says that, you're all selling. When was the first time I sold something? I don't know, when I wanted a bag of sweets from my parents. Everybody's selling constantly, whether you like it or not. If you're trying to get a project off the ground internally, you're going to have to sell it to your boss, to someone who's going to fund it, whatever that looks like. If you're trying to change your process, anyone who's got the joy of being an Agile coach and being Agile transformation, they will know that you've got to sell that idea across the organization, within the organization. So having decided this, we then started to say, okay, we need to do something about it. So the first thing that we did is we did an extended sort of speedboat, a retro, a cross-organizational retro. So what you're seeing here is a retro of all the different functional leads. It was actually from a client. And the object of the exercise was to work out if they all had the same problems, if there was any way we could make, and it's based around the framing of the question, the framing of the question's in there somewhere, is, how can we improve sales? And the key thing is we started to see patterns of the same problem. So you can see groupings here of the same problem. Okay? 12, clever analysis, and basically people saying the same thing to you, putting them together. So what we then started to say was, okay, well, there's a problem here. How can we solve that? And all of the functional heads, to some extent, started to say, well, maybe we can help sales out. Maybe we are all trying to sell. Maybe there is some sort of understanding of what we can do. So then we started to look at, okay, what are those roles? Those roles are actually a set of skills. And the key thing about these skills is when they start to pop up, is you'll realize that there isn't a skill that I put up there, skill, task, something you have to do, that is only done by one person. You know, problem solving. Why should problem solving be the purvey of the customer strategy? You know, everyone can solve a problem. I solve a problem every time I'm stuck in traffic. So the key thing here is that, well, hang on a second. There's a lot of skills that are shared. There's a lot of knowledge that's shared. So therefore, why don't we start to build something that's more like a cross-functional team? There's no reason why you can't. So first thing we did is created, this is one specific of the case studies, is they created a pod. Okay? Why do they call it a pod? Because Katzenbach and Smith define a team as a small number of people with complementary skills who are committed to a common purpose. Now, the problem is, if you just push these people together, so in this case, it's the salesperson, the marketing person, and the biz dev research person, all at the front end of the funnel, if you like, the process, then are they working to a common purpose? So I would argue no, because they're not completing the entire cycle. Similarly, they're all paid differently. Biggest elephant in the room in any sort of sales organization, biz dev organization, is how do you remunerate people? So if I'm the salesperson and I get $1 million deal, and I get 10% of that, which would be first of all, very, very generous, but something that would motivate me, is that motivating the marketing person? So the answer is, to some extent, because they might be friendly with me, but to some extent, not financially. So until you can start to align things like that, I don't believe you can start to say that they're a genuine team. So what do? We started to think about how are they measured? What measures are they looking at? If you remember the first slide, very simple. Deals done. Okay? That's quite easy if you're two people in an organization, because you've got to pay for the lease of the office or software or what have you. When you start to be a larger organization, it becomes a bit more nuanced. So then they started to look at, okay, number of leads do we have? It's a funnel, number of contact points. How often do you ring a customer? Size of the pipeline, okay? How many potential deals could we be doing? Okay, and then most important thing, deals lost. Why is deals lost important? Because you learn from it. Anything negative, you learn from it. And then you still got your deals won and your dollar. So the teams work like that, okay? Jeff, you'll quite like the fact that it's a hypothesis. I was very happy when you said that. Okay, good. My slides work. But the point is that when I work with organizations, especially non-technical organizations, I like to work in terms of it's an experiment, it's a hypothesis, okay? Your hypothesis is different to my hypothesis. But let's agree on something. So if you can get these three people to work together to try to achieve something, then that's what we should try to do. So that's what they basically worked on for, I think it was a quarter. So the first thing, that because they were all the front of the sales, they started to experiment, encouraged by me. The first experiment they did was trying to get leads, okay? Because they're all marketing, business development, research, sales. It's all about the number of leads. Let's see how many leads we can get. The first experiment that this organization did, B2B, was a thing called CAPES, okay? It's all about trying to get as many leads as they could. CAPES because it's customer, association, partner, socials, okay? Now, question is, does that work? Oh, might do. They thought it did because, we're starting to work out who and where are our best customers. They started to find out what and when is the market fit. It could be cyclical, could be based on budget, etc., etc. And they focus on what could work and we can review what works. Okay, so lots of leads. But now they're counting the cost of lost leads. So lots and lots of leads in grey is good, But fundamentally, the numbers still say the same at the bottom. And I don't think I've worked on any of these, any organization, that includes actually product development team, that have success in day one. There's always, norming and storming goes on in a team. So the thing that was interesting to this particular case study is knowing how many you don't close, knowing how many you lose is actually demoralizing. Okay? Counting leads kind of isn't helping, especially if they're all not garbage. It's literally going to a meeting. It's literally like me coming to a conference and saying, you're all now my leads. Okay? You haven't got a clue what my product is. I haven't got a clue about anything about you. But suddenly I've gone home with 20 emails and I've said, we're good. Okay? Melanie Perkins, that's a quote from Melanie Perkins. She's the CEO of Canva. There's like a massive organization in Australia. She's one of the youngest CEOs of Unicorn, I think. And her take is that, you have to solve customer problems. The simple fact. So that's the next thing that these teams started to do. Okay? Our hypothesis is we'll be able to have better conversion being lead into sale or lead into deal, if we solve the customer's problem. I've heard that this morning. It's true, it works. But to do that, you need to start thinking about different people, different skills, potentially different things to measure. So that's what they started to do. They actually introduced the skills of a customer strategist. It may have been a new person, it may not have been a new person, but it's the skills of a customer strategist. Asking the right questions. Am I solving a problem for this customer? And if you're going to do that, you need to measure different things. So you're not just measuring the number of leads, you're starting to qualify the leads, where you get qualifying metrics. Trying to measure the conversion, go from step to step to step. So there were some findings that was quite interesting about this experiment, is that, there are people who are empowered to purchase, okay? And there are lots of other people. So I don't know out of this group how many of you have the budget and are empowered to purchase whatever it is I'm selling. But my suspicion is it's probably a very small percentage. So therefore my leads are suddenly diminished. So it's not whatever it is, 20, it's now 3. So how do you start speaking to those 3 people? I could be speaking to the wrong person in this room. So qualifying those leads is very important. The next thing is that many customers have a specific problem, that if you can solve that specific problem, that's good, but they're open to other ideas as well. For example, if you start to create a Scrum team that develops a product in a better way, they might be open to how you sell things. They might be open to how you do a biz dev process, is what happened to me. And market fit is essential. Timing is essential. I used the example of a Valentine's Day card. There's no point in bringing a Valentine's Day card to market on the 15th of February. You've missed timing. So, that's what this case study did. They started to look at how do we qualify our leads. There's the Band and Medic are 2 examples, but there's other ones. There's Enum, I forget, there's about 4 or 5 of them that are quite widely used. And what's interesting is that they started to say, okay, we can qualify the leads. And qualifying the leads actually does help. But I'd be careful about using tooling just for this. Salesforce have got Archimedes, is it? I can't remember what it is. It's their AI. But garbage in, garbage out. So you'll think you've got a great pipeline, but you actually don't have a great pipeline. So what did they start to do once they focused on the customer? Sales increased. Closing the sales increased. Fundamentally increased, actually. Those are actual numbers. But the key thing is, it's still an effort to get new people, new customers, to find the right people to talk to get to solve their problems, to find the right timing for those problems, and to then actually make the deal count, to actually close the deal. That's a lot of effort. And if you look down here, this is from my friends at Agile Marketing Alliance, Agile Alliance, can't remember. Customer retention by 5% can lead to customers' growth by 25. Can be up to 95. There's lots of organizations that basically have 1 or 2 customers up there. Existing customers are 50% more likely to try new products. Which is fascinating. I find that fascinating. And 31, I'd spend 31% more than new customers. Because people trust the product, whatever you're selling, and if you're open to another solution by the same people, chances are you'll invest in that. So what did this team do? They created another experiment. Okay. We're able to expand our markets by focusing on existing customers and reducing churn. So they put a lot more effort into keeping the customers they had, expanding within those customers, as in adding more revenue from those customers. And they found some interesting things. So this is a platform, in inverted commas, set of SaaS products. One thing that they found was that most customers didn't use half of what was in the platform. Didn't even know it was there, actually. But when they started to get the customer success person involved, then they were able to push and push and push and show there were other features. And if you have a model which is, like a sort of a freebie and then a medium product and then a pro product, it doesn't look good, does it? Is that plugged in? Okay. Well, you might do it without PowerPoint, which is quite interesting. Ready? PowerPoint. Well, we'll see if it goes down. It's plugged in, so it should be. So they added the customer success person to the team. So now you're growing. This is not just a pod anymore. Suddenly this is starting to become a team. Then you've got to measure different things. So now you're measuring the churn. You're measuring the expansion. You're measuring customer engagement. How often do you talk to the customers? So you're starting to build now different measures into what you're trying to do. And this is where I start to introduce things like OKRs. Because you're actually a team, so you should be now trying to achieve something. So it's not just we're just measuring the numbers, we're actually going to set targets for what we can measure in terms of the numbers. So what happened then is that they started to see, you can see I've changed now slightly, it's not the lost, it's the pipeline, it's gone from grey to blue. And you can see that the team's pipeline has stayed sort of consistent because churn's gone down and expansion's gone up. They're starting to now hit better targets. The other thing that I'll write down here is I believe that KPIs and OKRs have a sort of a complementary alliance. So, for example, OKRs are aspirational. I hope you're going to agree with that. We'll soon find out. OKRs are aspirational. Maybe not aspirational. They're an objective. You measure that objective. You try to achieve that objective. Arguably, you should be paid if you achieve that objective. KPIs are something that you measure continually. So I believe that as you start to have those measures that we had over the previous slides, as they start to go away, you might just move them into a KPI. You might just move them into a simple dashboard. You're measuring the dashboard day after day after day. Share price, for example. Now, the thing that's interesting about this particular case study is that suddenly everyone starts to be happy. People now start to want to join the team. It's quite nice. So once you get people who want to join the team, then you've got to actually construct it as a team. So I look at 2 models for teams, 5 dysfunctions of a team, quite an old, well-tried, tested one, and the big 9 cultural values from MIT. The way that they actually organized teams is they started to create them as a value stream. So the team is now delivering value to a set of clients. So large, X number of large clients, I believe it was like 3 or 4, X number, small, medium enterprises, 10, 20. Any new clients you gather along the way become part of your value stream. So it becomes very segmented, actually in this case, quite chaotic, because everyone was trying to get a new client. So as you start to build out your team, it's important to assess that team. I believe you should continually assess a team. So if you're setting OKRs, you assess them based on when the OKRs are due. You have your KPI dashboards. And then that's a tool that I've used in the past. I still use it. That's from Agility Health. And it's a cultural radar. So they're one of the few that actually do a cultural radar, so non-IT. That's why we use that. But that's a way of actually assessing the health of the team and seeing if the team is actually, burnout, dysfunction, and it actually supports, I think it supports the MIT SLO model. So that assessment of the team continually is important. Now I believe, and this is what they started to do, is you can start to scale this. And then the question is, how do you scale it? And what do you do in terms of these people? Because these people are highly skilled, legal experts, financial experts. What do you do with them? So I believe you start to create Kanban. The easiest thing to do. Kanban at the bottom there is the Kanban for the opportunity. It starts on the left as a target, it goes through state 1, 2, 3, and eventually it's closed or lost. At the top, every time you have something that's needed for a person with a high skill, you put it on their Kanban board. So you can effectively have dependencies within this organization. You don't have to have everyone get and everyone as a member of the team and only a member of the team. Okay, this was quite an interesting experiment. It was an attempt to reduce cycle time. So what they actually did was they tried to reduce the cycle time from many months to days, weeks actually. And what actually happened is that they switched their target. So they stopped looking for the big banks. No disrespect to anyone who works for a big bank, they're a bit slow. Onerous procurement processes, et cetera, and they started to aim for sort of like scale-ups, small, medium organizations. Right, the final review is I'm going to tell you what happened to each of those case studies. Okay, so the IPO, the scale-up who went to IPO in 5 years, they had a 19% increase in a quarter. They had a 250-person BDR team that cold called people insanely, and once they got a hit, they sent it out to one of the cross-functional teams. They reduced churn by 5% during the same quarter. The digital scale-up reduced churn from 47% to 11% in 6 months, which they were very happy with because it meant that they didn't actually have to find any new customers. The large bank, they stopped $34 million of churn of people leaving their platform that was 11 years out of date or 11 years late. And it's simply because they actually had customer service people saying, here's some new stuff, here's what we can bring to you. You realize it's going to take 2 years to move to another platform. Why don't you just stay with us? Very simple messaging, but effective. And the large manufacturer, the hardware digital keyboard manufacturer, they increased sales by 3.8 million over 6 months. I'm going to leave you with an experiment that they did. So they spent, I can't remember what it was something like 3 million on paid ads. And they believed the paid ads were a waste of time, but they couldn't prove it. So they ran an experiment where every paid ad that they could think of was given 10 grand, limit of 2 weeks, and they ran the experiment to see how many leads they got. So Facebook ads, that was blown out in half an hour. Google, same thing. The one that won was somebody in a back room playing the keyboard on YouTube with the new digital product. But it's not always the most expensive that wins. There are some takeaways. My personal opinion: build cross-functional teams, dream, data rules everything around me. Anyone heard of CREAM? Cash rules everything around me. Be customer-centric and improve and evolve. Run as many experiments as you can. I don't believe this is limited to business dev. I don't believe this is limited to product. I was telling Caitlin about a financial team that did continual close of the books. I believe that this is a way of working that goes way beyond what we normally use it for. So I leave you with a call to action and a couple of quotes. The PMI, I personally find quite funny because we all think PMI are all stodgy, but they actually use cross-functional teams in their sales, their B2B sales. That's the head of America, good friend of mine, Gary, and that's his quote. This is from the founder of Yext, Howard Lerman. Don't know if any of you know, that was one of the case studies I was using. That's what he says. Everybody's in sales. If you're not in sales, you're not part of the company. Simple as that. That's the end of my presentation. Any questions?